All right, how's everybody doing? Hope this works out pretty well. I'm trying a new headset, never used one of these before, never done a YouTube live stream, so what could possibly go wrong? Okay, let me get everything mildly adjusted, have some coffee. Okay, been getting a few requests to talk about myself, Modern American Shamanism, the books, or actually one book, and then my new one coming out that's still at the proofreader. So I don't actually have two books yet. We'll call it one and a half. Um, my name is Jeff. A lot of times at the different pagan and heathen communities, I sometimes will go by Hooded Wanderer or Jeff Hooded Wanderer. It's not a big deal. Most people just call me Jeff. Um, my wife and a few other people who are much better at promoting things suggested that I come out of the 19th century once again because I had crawled back in there and do some YouTube videos. I'm still not doing the TikTok thing, not doing Twitter or anything like that. But YouTube, Facebook, I can almost handle living there for a while as long as I can drink coffee, I guess. If the sound's not working, um, I guess I will redo another video because I don't know how to check to see if anything's coming through. So to begin with, who am I? Um, I'm me. But I guess I started down this Germanic pagan heathen path almost 30 years ago. Um, when I was a kid, it was just the way we lived our lives. Now, my family is not some royal pagan family from God knows how far back or any crazy shit like that. Uh, my dad's side of the family is just Pennsylvania German. We didn't do any heathen rituals. We didn't do any pagan Southern European pagan rituals. What we did do was we lived close to the land. We spent a lot of time in the woods. We talked about honoring nature, how to make simple offerings. Um, don't destroy nature, simple shit, and then your traditional Pennsylvania German stuff, how to plant gardens, how to do or not do scarecrows, because when I was little, I didn't comprehend the concept between a scarecrow and what's called a budsman, which is kind of a Pennsylvania German magical scarecrow. That is a lot of work. My dad used to tell me, says, "No, no, you don't do that. It's just a lot of work." And I'm a little kid, I'm like, I want to do a lot of work. And now that I do it every year, I'm like, I don't want to do a lot of work. But anyway, um, you know, never really did blows, but we did do things that resembled symbols. Um, didn't know anything about the ruins, Pennsylvania German ruins, or anything like that until the 1990s. So, but technically, hardcore, I'm doing the heathen thing since the early 1990s. So, technically, I've not been focused on this for 50 something years, just a couple decades. Um, Along that path, I was always encouraged to look into other ethnicities because most people from Europe here in America, uh, a lot of different ethnic groups intermarried and moved on, creating new things. So my mom's side of the family is strictly Irish. My dad, Pennsylvania German, and my grandma was pure Cherokee. And so as I grew older, I looked into some of the Native American things, specifically Cherokee. Took a study with uh, Cherokee medicine man and another pipe carrier, and did not become Native American. Did not do anything ritualistic or anything with the Native American traditions. I learned about their spirituality and how they interact with their gods and how they interact with the earth. And I learned how to honor my grandmother on the different Desir rituals. I honor her and her people on those days. I'm I'm not Native American, and I don't want to jump into all that stuff trying to pretend like I am. Uh, then I also learned about the Irish traditions. I am not a big Celtic pagan person, but I do honor my mom and my grandmother and grandfather's traditions, who were Baptist. But I honor, their Celtic heritage and not so much any type of pagan traditions from them. I basically, it's a heathen thing. I try to honor my ancestors in a meaningful way that I either know or feel would be a positive thing for them. I definitely just try and remember them and the things that they taught me and all that good stuff. As you can see, I'm not really big on talking about myself. I'm trying to drag all this out. I don't know a whole lot to talk about myself here. So let's move on. Um, More personal history, because talking about myself again. Um, in the military, my wife and I, you guys probably know her as Crow Spirit or Sandra. We got lucky enough to be stationed in Germany, specifically northern Germany, which is a different country than southern Germany. If you've ever been to both of them, um, and so that's where I found out about the Northern European heathenism, Germanic paganism. Um, it's the funniest thing too. It just started off with some comment. Uh, Person I worked with, a German, uh, he used to joke. He was a very funny guy. Anytime he would set you up for something stupid, like his big favorite one was to tell a new guy to go up to the bar and order drinks for everybody. And of course, he'd be like, I don't know how to do that. And he'd give him very specific thing to say. And the guy's like, oh, okay, I can do that. And he'd go up there and he'd wait for the guy to get slapped, because instead of I need 4 shots of whatever, he would be saying, I'd like to see your breasts. And one time the waitress, the bartender came around. She came around and just smacked the snot out of our German friend, and that just stuck with me forever. That was more funny than anything else because she was not stupid. She knew what was coming. But anyway, I digress. He used to always say, "Ich habe Schwein." And I said, "What is this? What does that mean?" And he said, "Oh, you guys would say good luck." And I say, "So what's up with good luck and the pigs? Why are you guys so fixated on pigs?" And he told us about this brother sister uh, twins. They were some kind of, he would say, some kind of old German gods. Um, and things, and they rode around on pigs, and they were for fertility of the land and people and stuff. And it ended up being Freyr and Freya that he was talking about. And this was my literal initial introduction, him getting the snot knocked out of him and talking about pigs. And so that piqued my interest. Excuse me. I did not enough coffee. That piqued my interest on the German lore. Not so much the spiritual practices, but the lore. I've always enjoyed lore from several different countries, so it's just a thing. And then later on, we actually went to southern Germany, down to Augsburg for a couple weeks for specialized training. Ended up in this crazy bar and met these people. One of them was doing what I didn't understand at the time were runes, and I was asking questions, and this is where my I got this thing where I'm talking about doing rune readings. Oh, you're ruining somebody, and it drove my wife nuts for the longest time because she would do like simple rune readings. She'd be like, "Oh, don't ruin them," and stuff. Anyway, I have a bad sense of humor, but I picked up talking to them. I learned a system of reading the runes that are different than anything I've come across ever since. Now, straight up, they said this was traditional German method of reading the runes. I don't know these people for more than a day or two. I don't know anything about them. Traditional could mean they traditionally invented that 36 seconds before I met them. They said it went back, several generations. I don't know what that means. I mean, I'd like to say it goes back a couple hundred years, but again, it could be 30 seconds. They might have just dumped this stuff out on the table. Some weird American guy goes, "Hey, that looks interesting. What are you guys doing?" And then we're like, "Oh, hey, here we go." But anyway, so, but I usually, when I'm talking about it, I say traditional German because that's what it was explained to me. But I find it very interesting, very effective, and it really breaks down the concepts and the tie to the Norns and the web of weird really well. In fact, I went over it in my last class, and some of the feedback I got was it went way over some people's heads. So we're probably going to do a class two that focuses more on the Norns, the web of weird, and those two methods of reading the runes. So I can break it down, work with people more. Um, like I said, I just found it very interesting and really straightforward to me. But that doesn't mean that it's interesting and really straightforward to everybody else. But it is different. It doesn't use the tarot layouts. It actually, I guess the best way I can describe it is a web of weird kind of layout. So, but there, and it has two variations. There's the straight one where you take away all of the runes that are face down, and then you just read the ones that are up. And then there's the second version, which some people find much more difficult, is upside down runes are usually blocks to your choices on given paths if you know anything about the runes. And so I just find it interesting. It works for me. So, but that was my first introduction to the runes. And of course, I've read a bunch of books since then. I enjoy reading books in the runes. I love reading books about the Eddas, about the Norse gods, or as they say in Scandinavian Norway, the Norse powers. Um, I've read. Uh, I love my saga hordes. I've read a bunch of sagas, which led me to my first book, which is about the different rituals. Um, and then, but I'll get back to that. And I loved when I came across the first books on the Pennsylvania Germans. That just really struck me. It's like I had to get out and buy these immediately. There was only two uh, specifically for modern. I own the ones that were written in the 1800s and early 1900s, which are pretty good. They're basically an anthropologist is visiting all these remote Pennsylvania German farms and talking to these people, going over talking to Hexerai and Brockerai and going over the rituals. Some of the rituals are really interesting. German paganism slash heathen is much more pagan orientated in its magic and rituals. It's not as straightforward as the more Scandinavian, Norway, Iceland kind of these things. Look at rituals and I guess magic, if you want to call it that. So it can be more interesting if you're more of a modern pagan. That's kind of more your thing. The Pennsylvania German magic, it would probably feel more familiar to you. It's not as complicated, not as difficult to do. It is not high magic, but it is has a more of a pagan flavor when it comes to magic. But the little book of German Pennsylvania lore and the dictionary Pennsylvania German Erglava. That's a modern Pennsylvania German magic or ritual tradition. I find incredibly interesting. And if you speak or you know how to translate or read modern German, it's not Pennsylvania German. I didn't understand that until I started listening to some of their videos, which are uh, I share the links and stuff. I'll put some more down in the comments below the video. But when the Pennsylvania Germans and my early ancestors came over here in the late 1600s, early 1700s, they were basically speaking Old High German, which is what they spoke in Germany. Well, you're separated by this ocean. So the Pennsylvania Germans that came here, their German took a totally different evolutionary route than the Germans in Germany. And so it's kind of funny because if you can actually find videos of Pennsylvania Germans and Germans trying to talk to each other, they can't understand a word they're saying. It's not like English, the Queen's English and American English. It's not even like Bostonian and Midwestern. It's become two totally different languages, and they pronounce everything really different. But anyway, that's for the linguists and you can like to listen to that. So that's enough about me and the little track that got me here and things that I've done. Uh, but been studying heathenism and Germanic paganism for almost 30 years. Doesn't make me an expert by far because every time I always find something else, and I enjoy finding something else and learning different things and finding the new archaeological finds are they blow my mind, and I just love keep finding these things because I not only do I read the books, the sagas and the Eddas and the history books on Pennsylvania Germans and the archaeological finds and everything, but it just I go the whole board. I even dig up old college papers about this kind of thing that you can find online. Read those. I just really enjoy researching the history. Uh, Next topic. More stuff about me. I got to quit this crap. Um, I did look into and study some Cherokee traditions. I said that. Um, I studied two forms of Tai Chi Chuan and Qigong uh, when I was younger. And one of the last people I studied with said, if you really want to understand the Chinese, you need to understand, and specifically Tai Chi Chuan, you need to understand Taoism. And he suggested I go study to be a Taoist priest. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to do that. And he's like, you don't have to become ordained or anything. Just, go study. And that way you'll understand the culture a little bit more, specifically as it ties into the Tai Chi Chuan and Qigong practices. I'm like, okay. I had the time. My wife didn't mind not seeing me a couple nights a week because I was always had my head in the online classes. But I studied and completed the training, but I did not become ordained because I just didn't want to be a Taoist priest. It wasn't a thing. It's not a piece of paper I needed. I was not going to do rituals. I was not going to do any kind of Taoist stuff. But it did provide a nice framework and understanding for kind of like a shamanic, an old into modern shamanic idea of what is going on. So I did that. Um, yeah, and then around 2013, 2015, my wife and I, we decided there wasn't a lot of heathen stuff going on in the Midwest, except for a little bit over in Kansas, but nothing on our side of the state of Missouri. So we poked around, talked to people. The word heathenism still had some sketchy connotations here, so we went with the word shamanism, the one you're not supposed to use today. So we called it Modern American Shamanism, strictly because we didn't want to be tied into or lumped into, because the bald guy with the gold with the goatee, So I was like, I was behind the eight ball to begin with, so we went with something less dramatic, I guess. Less chance of being just thrown into the wrong group of people before we even started. But modern American shamanism is where we what we settled on. That's been around for quite a while now. We teach classes at the St. Louis Pagan Picnic. We try and do that every year for over a decade now, except for the 2 years that it wasn't happening because of issues. My wife and I, she's not teaching classes this year, but I am. I'll be also be at the author's table with our first book, maybe our rune book too. We'll have to wait and see if that comes back from the publishers in time. Um, but we've been putting out there basically a solid understanding of what Germanic paganism and heathenism actually is, not the modern interpretations. There's nothing wrong with the modern interpretations. We say this in most of our classes. Modern American shamanism about teaching the traditional rituals and understandings to our knowledge where our ancestors left off as Christianity took over. Okay. So when we dig into the sagas and we dig into the the German lore and on brain fart. Grimm, the Brothers Grimm. Besides their fairy tales, they have several volumes on German lore that has to do with the German paganism, heathenism. Highly recommend you read them if you want to get a more German understanding of the lore and beliefs and things like that. But as we're looking through this and everything, so we decided we teach those classes. My wife used to focus on the herbs and other things, and she is a little more pagan-esque than I am, so she does love her crystals and rocks. But she has wonderful herb classes as they pertain to the European traditions, the more European herbs. Specifically, something simple like instead of sage to smudge, most Northern European people use mugwort. Something simple like that, but a lot more information and a lot more herbs that way. Um, but we slowly move things forward from we're not all crazy people to you know these are the gods, these are the some of the things that they understood, why worshiping ancestors was so important, why they worship the ancestors, the land whites, or the nature spirits, more than the gods. Everything. The problem that a lot of people have is they like to be Christian light, which is fine, but that's not how our ancestors did things. And so, if you want to understand how they did things, we go back to that foundation. We start there. Now, we have no idea what heathenism or Germanic paganism would look like today. I always say we could be sitting in what looks like a Catholic church, but instead of the crucifix up front, it could be a representation of Odin hanging upside down from Yggdrasil. We don't know what it would look like today, which frees people up to, if they have that basic information, they can take that and move forward into their personal practices, what is right for them today in the 21st century. Not everybody has to look alike. We don't have to smell alike. We don't have to dress alike. But we just like in modern American shamanism, like to start from that solid foundation and move forward. Now we have made some simple changes in our practices. I think once or maybe twice in the book, I specifically say, this is the way our ancestors did it, and this is the way we do it. Now I know in the rune book, and in the last rune class I taught, I tell everybody we have no idea how our ancestors learned the runes. We're going to assume it was they went around with somebody or studied with somebody who knew the runes, and that's how they did it. We don't know. So we teach. We have a very specific way that really helps a lot of people learn the runes really well. Ingrains them like your ABCs, which we get into in our class. Why that's important. And but so those that. But we always say this is what we know where our ancestors left off, and this is why we made changes. Excuse me, and why we do things today. Okay, done talking about that. This that is backwards says working with the ancestors, a heathen's guide to the rituals of Northern Europe by me, right there, Jeff Felty. I don't say Hooded Wanderer on my books. What's in this book is just that. Again, because we're looking back at where our ancestors left off, that's why we're working with the ancestors, and it is the rituals. When we flip through here, I talk about what rituals are, what is a sacrifice, and how our ancestors sacrificed. That is very important. Um, in the Middle East, in India, in Southern Europe, so like Rome, Greece, and things like that, things where we have written things, like they chop up parts of the animal and burn it to ashes. That was the god's part. I think in Rome or Greece, they'd like chop off the thighs for, I just don't know the god's names. I'm sorry. I should, but I don't. And that was theirs. And then they would cook and eat the rest of the animal. Whereas in Northern Europe, they sacrifice the blood. The Megan is in the blood, and the energy is what you're sacrificing. And then they completely ate the animal. And in most what we call heathen countries, Northern European, went a lot with horses. Horse meat was the most important thing in their diet, which is why the Catholic Church outlawed eating horses. Talk about rituals, weird, Norns, Orlog, what they are, how things interact, uh, very specific funeral rituals for Northern European and German and Pennsylvania German, and they're completely different. Very specifically talk about land taking rituals and house taking rituals, which people are supposed to do before you do bloats and symbols, either on land or in a house. And I explain why. Talk about the gifting cycle, why that's important. And then I jump into a bunch of knowledge. Um, the the things we know about heathen and pagan traditions today that aren't in the sagas, but we know existed because the church outlawed them. If they didn't exist, they wouldn't have wrote laws against them. Talk about the different holidays. I give a ton of kennings and other useful information. That's exactly how I wrote it in here. Um, in the book, this book. And I do that because I wanted to share a book that I wish I had way back in the early 1990s when I started this. I love big college style textbooks full of extraneous information, way too much shit going on. I love those. I read those all day long. I got a couple heathen books that way, several pagan books that way. But those are stuff I read for fun and general information when I have the time. Um, I've only found a couple really thin, yet chocked full of very specific information. This is more of a reference book, as in when you need to know how to do a bloat or you need to know how to do a land taking and you don't want to dig through 300 pages to find it, or you don't want to hold a giant book up or while you're doing things. That's what this is. It's a reference book. It's not meant to be a one step go to college book. Okay. Like I said, I specifically wrote that one as the reference book I wish I had way back in the late 20th century. I just keep saying that now because it sounds so weird to me. Um, but I've got a lot of positive feedback on it. A lot of people say that's exactly what they love about it. They can grab the book, go right to the page, maybe turn one or two pages. What they're looking for is right there. It's written out step by step. It's easy to understand. You don't have to guess anything. It tells you where to find it in the sagas, in the Eddas, or um, which Pennsylvania German books to go to find it. Or I even put down some YouTube video links in there if you want to go and listen to some of the talks about that. And I think I even put down one or two websites that people could go to find similar information, just so that you have everything that you need. And it's not just me saying this is how it is and this is how everybody should do it, and which is what we try and get the farthest away from. And so everybody has everything they need. In our next book about the runes, which we haven't settled on a name yet. Smarter people than me have shot down several ideas, but we're still tossing around three of them. The rune book's going to be the exact same way. How it's going to be set up, so everybody knows before it comes out. Um, a brief history of the runes. Okay. Um, what they are, what we know about them from the past, uh, where the concept of the Elder Futhark comes from, the runestone that has the original Elder Futhark in order, the first one found. Several other rune stones, what those are and what they are not. I got a couple objects in there with runic inscriptions just to show the fact that the Northern Europeans were, and even the Vikings were just regular people. Like my favorite one is the graffiti by the Varangian Guard. Bjorn was here. Um, but it just breaks down like that. And then I break down every available Futhark. So you know what the Futhark, what the runes look like, because some of them are different, some of them are very different. Some have 24, some have 32, some have 16, some have 18. And why they're different and everything, and what those runes represent. If they have a modern alphabet um, equal, like Feu for F and everything like that, I put those right there. What the rune pictographically represents, the modern alphabet letter that it represents. Then I also broke down all the rune poems so that even as most of them, actually all of them, are heavily Christianized. But I went ahead and put in all the rune poems that go with each Futhark, so they're all put together. You don't have to like read the rune poems in a different chapter and then try and go back and associate them. They're all right there together with each Futhark. We even have in Modern American Shamanism tried our best to rewrite a modern rune poem for the Elder Futhark that has all the Christian elements removed from it. I think it's kind of cool. My wife thinks I'm kind of goofy, but I just kind of like the idea of trying to rewrite what might be close to an original rune poem that hasn't been Christianized by the church. We go through how we teach people to learn the runes. We go through how to do some basic rune castings, like the Odin rune cast and the Norn rune cast. Those are all both modern. We go through, try and break down as best we can the what we call again the traditional German rune casting, and how to work with those. I also add more knowledge that is different than the extraneous knowledge I tagged onto the end of the first book, because again, more free knowledge. The more that you have to choose from in a reference book, the idea of it, you can go back to the appendices and just dig up more and more information uh, that you can find that you can end up using anywhere that you need to use it. So that's basically kind of the idea of what's going to be going on in the rune book. It's going to be around 200 pages, which is bigger than the Working with the Ancestors book, but not that much bigger. So it's still going to be small, still going to be affordable. And that's the other thing. We charge $8.99 for the Working with the Ancestors book, because it doesn't do anybody any good to have a really nice, concise reference book that you can't afford to purchase. So I get heat for that too. You're not charging enough. You should charge more. People really like the book. You need to charge more for it. That's not the point of the book. And if it hasn't been made clear, I'm not good at marketing myself or anything that we do. So I wanted to do $8.99 so that people could afford to get it and use it if they wanted to. I'm going to do the same thing. It'll probably be a little bit more because it's more pages and it's going to cost us more to have them printed up, but not much more. So hopefully you'll enjoy the rune book. Hopefully you enjoy the Working with the Ancestors book. And we're going to have a lot more classes coming out this year for in-person classes. So hopefully we'll see everybody there. If you check back at our Facebook page, we always put all of our classes and information there. You check back on our web page. We always put all our news and information and everything that we're doing and everything we've done in the past. And our blog posts, which I've been a little remiss on because we've been really busy with the in-person classes and getting these two books out. It's a lot more difficult. The writing of the book is easy. Everything else that comes after writing the books is what gets fucking hairy and shit. Oops, sorry, and stuff. But I'm gonna get back on the blog posts and get the free information, keep flowing out there and moving along. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it has sound, and I'll put the links to our Facebook page and our web page down at the bottom. See you all later.